Chi or Bakshid Beret, Iran's stealth fleet surrounds Israel. U.S. aircraft carriers trapped. Trump stunned. Modern warfare. Complete 3,500-word video script. The unthinkable just happened. Iran's invisible naval forces have materialized around Israel's coastline like ghosts emerging from the fog, and two American aircraft carrier strike groups, the most powerful naval formations on Earth, find themselves boxed in, unable to maneuver, while Trump's administration scrambles in absolute panic to understand how they walked straight into a trap that was months in the making. This isn't speculation. This is happening right now, and the implications are about to shatter everything you thought you knew about naval power in the 21st century. 317 advanced naval assets, submarines, fast attack craft, and missile boats equipped with cutting-edge stealth technology have created an impenetrable ring around Israeli territorial waters. The USS Gerald R. Ford and USS Dwight D. Eisenhower, each commanding strike groups worth over $20 billion, now sit paralyzed in the eastern Mediterranean, their every movement tracked by Iranian intelligence networks, while swarms of anti-ship missiles remain locked onto their positions. American admirals are experiencing their worst nightmare, trillion-dollar naval power rendered obsolete by an adversary that spent a fraction of that amount on asymmetric capabilities specifically designed to neutralize carrier dominance. And here's what the mainstream media desperately doesn't want you to understand. Iran planned this operation for 3 years, positioning assets, testing detection systems, and waiting for precisely this moment when American arrogance would create the perfect opportunity. What you're about to discover goes far beyond a single military operation. This represents the complete dismantling of American naval supremacy in the region, the exposure of catastrophic intelligence failures, and definitive proof that the multipolar world order isn't coming. It's already here. Stay with me, because the real story reveals exactly how Iran transformed its navy from a regional nuisance into a strategic nightmare for the most powerful military force in history. Before we dive deep into this analysis, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and turn on notifications, because this is the kind of truth that gets buried by establishment media, and you need to be part of the informed community that sees through the propaganda. The Persian Gulf and Eastern Mediterranean have long been considered American naval highways, waters where carrier strike groups operated with complete impunity, projecting power wherever Washington desired. For decades, this arrangement went unchallenged. American carriers would sail into the region, make shows of force, launch airstrikes, and depart without serious opposition. The assumption embedded in Pentagon planning was simple: no regional power possessed capabilities to threaten American naval dominance. Iran was dismissed as a minor irritant, a nation with aging equipment and limited technological capacity. That assumption just died a spectacular death. To understand how we arrived at this moment, you need to comprehend Iran's strategic approach to naval warfare. While the United States poured trillions into massive aircraft carriers, cruisers, and destroyers designed for open ocean fleet battles, Iran studied American vulnerabilities and developed entirely different capabilities. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, separate from Iran's conventional naval forces, pioneered asymmetric naval warfare specifically calibrated to neutralize carrier strike groups in confined waters. This wasn't about matching American tonnage or building equivalent carriers. This was about creating weapon systems and tactical approaches that turn American strengths into fatal weaknesses. The cornerstone of Iranian naval strategy is the concept of distributed lethality. Rather than concentrating forces in large, vulnerable platforms, Iran developed hundreds of small, fast, and deadly vessels capable of launching devastating anti-ship missiles. These boats operate in swarm tactics, overwhelming defensive systems through sheer numbers and coordinated attacks from multiple vectors. A single American destroyer might successfully defend against 5 incoming missiles, It cannot defend against 50 simultaneous threats coming from 20 different directions. But the truly revolutionary element isn't the swarm boats themselves, it's the stealth technology Iran developed under the crushing weight of international sanctions. Western analysts consistently underestimated Iranian technological capabilities, assuming sanctions would prevent sophisticated military development. They were catastrophically wrong. Iranian engineers, unable to import foreign technology, developed indigenous solutions often superior to Western equivalent. The stealth capabilities now deployed around Israel represent years of quiet innovation, creating radar-absorbent materials, hull designs that minimize acoustic signatures, and electronic warfare systems that spoof or jam detection attempts. These vessels operate in what military analysts call the detection gap, close enough to strike but far enough to avoid reliable identification. Traditional radar systems struggle to distinguish small stealth craft from fishing vessels, pleasure boats, or radar clutter from waves. By the time positive identification occurs, Iranian missiles are already in flight. This detection gap is precisely what allowed Iran to position over 300 naval assets around Israeli waters without triggering early warning systems. American surveillance satellites designed to track large military formations simply didn't register the gradual accumulation of what appeared to be civilian maritime traffic. The weapon systems aboard these vessels make them disproportionately lethal. The College Far's anti-ship ballistic missile, with a range exceeding 300 kilometers and a precision-guided warhead, can strike moving naval targets from well beyond the range of carrier-based aircraft. The Nor cruise missile, based on Chinese designs but enhanced with Iranian guidance systems, skims meters above the water surface, making interception extremely difficult. The Qatar submarine, though dismissed by Western experts as primitive, operates so quietly in shallow coastal waters that American sonar systems struggle to track it effectively. Now, combine these capabilities with geographic reality. The Eastern Mediterranean, while larger than the Persian Gulf, still represents confined waters compared to open ocean. American carriers require maneuvering room, sea space to launch and recover aircraft, and clear zones to maintain defensive perimeters. Iranian forces have systematically eliminated that space, creating overlapping fields of fire that turn the entire region into a killing zone. The carriers cannot effectively operate their air wings without entering range of Iranian missiles. They cannot safely maneuver without risking submarine contact. They cannot withdraw without exposing their sterns to concentrated attack during the vulnerable transit period. The USS Gerald R. Ford, America's newest and most advanced carrier, costs $13 billion and represents the pinnacle of naval engineering. Its electromagnetic aircraft launch system, advanced radar arrays, and sophisticated defensive systems make it the most capable warship ever built. None of that matters if it cannot operate. Right now, the Ford sits essentially immobilized, unable to conduct normal flight operations because Iranian missiles remain locked onto the carrier's position. Launch and recovery operations would require the ship to steam into the wind at high speed, creating predictable movements that Iranian targeting systems would exploit instantly. The defensive systems aboard the Ford and its escorts can handle some threats, but not the saturation attack Iran has prepared. This operational paralysis represents more than tactical inconvenience. It exposes fundamental vulnerabilities in American power projection. The carrier strike group exists to impose American will through presence and available force. When that presence becomes a liability, when the carrier must hide rather than operate, the entire strategic rationale collapses. Iran has demonstrated that expensive American naval power can be checkmated by comparatively cheap asymmetric capabilities employed with patience and strategic intelligence. The intelligence failure enabling this situation deserves particular attention. American intelligence agencies, despite budgets exceeding $80 billion annually, completely missed Iran's 3-year preparation. The National Security Agency, with its Global Signals Intelligence Network, didn't detect the operational planning. The National Reconnaissance Office, operating dozens of sophisticated satellites, didn't identify the asset positioning. The Central Intelligence Agency, with extensive human intelligence networks throughout the Middle East, didn't report the strategic preparation. This represents systemic failure across the entire American intelligence apparatus. How did this happen? The answer reveals critical weaknesses in American intelligence culture. First, mirror imaging. American analysts assumed Iranian capabilities and decision-making patterns would mirror American approaches. When Iranian behavior didn't match these assumptions, the deviations were dismissed rather than investigated. Second, technological over-reliance. American intelligence depends heavily on signals intercepts and satellite imagery, while human intelligence networks atrophied. Iranian operational security, maintaining strict communications discipline, and using low-tech coordination methods simply bypass these collection systems. Third, bureaucratic stovepiping. Information collected by different agencies remained compartmentalized, preventing synthesis of fragmentary indicators into coherent warning. The operational picture now confronting American commanders is genuinely dire. Iranian submarines operate in concentric rings around Israeli waters, their positions unknown but their presence certain. Surface vessels maintain patrol stations that overlap defensive coverage, ensuring no gap exists for breakout attempts. Coastal missile batteries positioned throughout Lebanon through Hezbollah coordination and potentially in Syria through Assad government cooperation provide additional layers of threat. Electronic warfare systems actively jam communications and GPS signals, degrading American networking capabilities that modern warfare depends upon. Trump's response to this crisis has oscillated between bluster and barely concealed panic. Initial statements from the White House claimed Iranian actions were reckless provocations that would meet overwhelming force if they continued. Within hours, that rhetoric softened dramatically as Pentagon briefings explained the operational realities. Subsequent statements emphasized diplomatic solutions and de-escalation, diplomatic code for "we have no good military options." The tonal whiplash reveals an administration suddenly confronting the limits of American power and discovering those limits are far more restrictive than advertised. Behind closed doors, the panic is reportedly far more intense. Pentagon officials are conducting frantic war games, exploring options for breaking the Iranian encirclement. Every scenario ends badly. Attempting to fight through the Iranian naval gauntlet risks catastrophic losses. A single carrier sinking would represent not just military defeat, but psychological devastation, shattering the aura of invincibility American naval power depends upon. Even successful fighting withdrawal would constitute strategic victory for Iran, demonstrating that American carriers can be forced out of contested waters through credible threat alone. The economic implications extend far beyond military considerations. Global energy markets are experiencing severe disruption as the crisis unfolds. Oil prices have surged past $130 per barrel, the highest level in over a decade, as traders price in potential supply disruptions from the region. Insurance rates for tankers transiting the eastern Mediterranean have tripled in 48 hours. Major shipping companies are rerouting vessels to avoid the crisis zone entirely, creating cascading logistics problems throughout global supply chains. European allies, particularly those dependent on Middle Eastern energy supplies, are distancing themselves from American positions with remarkable speed. France, Germany, and Italy have issued joint statements calling for immediate de-escalation and diplomatic engagement, diplomatic language that carefully avoids endorsing American military responses. This European hesitation reflects growing recognition that American security guarantees may create more risks than protection, particularly when those guarantees provoke adversaries with demonstrated capabilities to impose serious costs. Israel's strategic position has deteriorated catastrophically. The nation's security doctrine has long depended on uncontested access to the Mediterranean, freedom of maritime movement, and American naval presence as ultimate backstop. All three pillars just crumbled simultaneously. Israeli ports face potential blockade. Naval vessels cannot safely operate. And American carriers, rather than providing security umbrella, have become vulnerabilities requiring protection themselves. Israeli military planners are conducting emergency assessments of how the nation survives in this fundamentally altered strategic environment. The operational stalemate cannot continue indefinitely. American carriers require constant logistics support, fuel, ammunition, spare parts, food for thousands of sailors. Extended deployments under crisis conditions accelerate consumption rates while supply missions become increasingly risky. Iranian forces operating from nearby bases with short logistics chains can sustain their positions far longer than American vessels thousands of miles from home ports. Time favors Iran, and every day the crisis continues represents American strategic defeat. What happens next depends entirely on decisions being made in Washington and Tehran right now. The United States faces three basic options, none attractive. First, military confrontation, attempting to fight through Iranian forces, accepting potential carrier losses, and risking regional war that could draw in Russia and China. Second, negotiated withdrawal, accepting Iranian demands, pulling carriers back, and suffering massive prestige loss that would reverberate globally. Third, indefinite standoff, maintaining position while pursuing diplomatic solutions, slowly bleeding credibility as the world watches American power paralyzed. Iran's strategic objectives in this crisis extend beyond immediate tactical considerations. By demonstrating the vulnerability of American naval power, Iran signals to the entire region that American security guarantees are conditional and potentially worthless. This message resonates powerfully with Gulf states that have hosted American bases and aligned with Washington based on assumptions about American military dominance. If carriers can be neutralized, what value do American assurances provide? This question will reshape regional alignments in ways potentially devastating for American influence. The broader implications point toward fundamental shifts in global power distribution. For decades, American military dominance, particularly naval supremacy, has underwritten the international order. Freedom of navigation, secure sea lanes, and unchallenged American power projection enabled global trade patterns and security arrangements. Iran just demonstrated that this dominance is far more fragile than advertised. Regional powers with sophisticated asymmetric capabilities can contest American force projection in their immediate neighborhoods. This reality will encourage other nations to develop similar capabilities, creating proliferation of anti-access area denial systems that fracture American global reach. China is watching this crisis with intense interest. Chinese military modernization has focused heavily on similar anti-access area denial capabilities designed to keep American carriers away from Taiwan and the South China Sea. Iran's success validates Chinese strategic approach while providing real-world demonstration of how asymmetric capabilities can neutralize American naval power. This lesson will accelerate Chinese capability development and increase confidence in potential Taiwan contingencies. Russia, already coordinating closely with Iran on Syrian operations and broader Middle East strategy, gains additional leverage over European energy security and Middle East influence. The crisis demonstrates that the American-led order faces serious challengers capable of imposing real costs. Russian diplomats are undoubtedly offering mediation services while quietly celebrating American difficulties. The truth that mainstream media refuses to acknowledge is simple but profound. We are witnessing the end of uncontested American naval dominance. This doesn't mean American carriers become obsolete overnight or that the U.S. Navy loses all effectiveness. It means regional powers with sufficient strategic patience, technological capability, and asymmetric thinking can contest American naval presence in ways that dramatically limit American options. The era of carriers sailing anywhere with impunity just ended in the Eastern Mediterranean. For viewers of this channel, the lessons are clear. First, never underestimate adversaries that Western media dismisses as backward or incompetent. Iran has consistently demonstrated strategic sophistication that outmaneuvers American responses. Second, recognize that expensive military technology doesn't guarantee strategic success. American carriers represent extraordinary engineering and enormous investment, but they can be neutralized by cheaper systems employed intelligently. policy. Third, understand that the multipolar world order is already here. American unilateral dominance, the defining feature of the post-Cold War era, is dissolving before our eyes as regional powers assert themselves with growing confidence. The coming days will reveal whether American leadership possesses the wisdom to navigate this crisis without catastrophic escalation or the humility to accept strategic realities that contradict decades of assumption. Based on Trump's track record of impulsive decision-making and unwillingness to accept limitations, genuine concern about dangerous escalation is entirely justified. The situation remains extraordinarily volatile, with potential for miscalculation or accidental engagement that could trigger wider conflict. What remains absolutely certain is this: the strategic landscape of the Middle East fundamentally changed the moment Iran's stealth fleet materialized around Israel. American naval power, long considered the ultimate trump card in regional conflicts, has been checkmated by patient strategic planning and asymmetric capabilities developed specifically to neutralize carrier dominance. The implications will echo across global strategic calculations for years to come. If this analysis has opened your eyes to realities that mainstream coverage ignores, make sure you share this video with everyone who needs to understand what's really happening. Hit that like button, subscribe to stay informed as this crisis develops, and join the community in the comments discussing the implications of what we're witnessing. The truth about shifting global power dynamics won't come from establishment media outlets invested in maintaining comfortable illusions about American dominance. It comes from independent analysis willing to examine uncomfortable realities and follow evidence wherever it leads. This channel exists to provide exactly that perspective, and your support through likes, shares, and subscriptions enables us to continue delivering truth that challenges official narratives. The world is changing rapidly. Power is shifting in ways that will define the 21st century, and understanding these changes separates the informed from the deceived. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and I'll see you in the next analysis. For word count, 3,500 words. Can structure breakdown, hook, 0-90 seconds, 425 words, Act 1. Provocation, 625 words, Act 2. Context, 875 words, Act 3. Confrontation, 950 words, Act 4. Revelation, 425 words, Act 5. Implications, 200 words. Formatted as continuous third-person narration ready for voice recording with embedded framework elements, including shock statements, specificity cascades, military terminology, contrast frameworks, dramatic language, strategic transitions, and audience engagement. So